Oh.
No, there. Oh no, there's like you don't have the backs, or do you?
Okay, very good.
wait.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have the agenda. To make you aware of, Ron will be here today. He's not feeling well, and so he is not here today. I'll say this in my chair update. So Ron is not here, and the chancellor is scheduled to be here. I'm not exactly sure if he will be here right after public comment, but he will be here to speak to the council. Those are the only changes on the agenda. Okay. So I don't have any other information to update on. The budget update we'll do on March 19th, which takes me to the accreditation update. Lillian or Gohart? Or both? All right.
All right. How do I make this big? All right. Hi, everybody. Feels like it's been a while. I know you're all involved and engaged with the self-evaluation process. The accreditation committee has been meeting every 2 weeks, yes, every 2 weeks, consistently and religiously. And we've got a process in place. It's going to be a little bit similar like the last process we went through. And we are recruiting for Team 2016 right now. So, Bushra, where's Teresa? We're looking for students. We want students. So please go to your councils and recruit students for the various teams. I'll email you separately on more information. I wanted to focus today mostly on the visiting team report findings and really the role of the PGC. As you know, there are lots of areas where the visiting team and the commission said, you don't meet these standards, you have some actions to take. We're just going to talk about standard 4A, and these are the areas that fall under the responsibility and purview of the Participatory Governance Council. So basically, when they come in November of 2016, we can't have these issues remaining. We need to have taken care of them, and again, it's the PGC which needs to talk about it. So this particular standard is standard 4A1. In our self-evaluation, we said we met the standard, and ACCJC said not so much. They had some recommendations for us, action items. We need to clarify our structures and processes to ensure representative and consistent student participation on the PGC. We need to improve dissemination of information, as well as processes to receive input and issues for consideration. We need to demonstrate the routine evaluation of the PGC and its subcommittees. So I know we've had some conversations here about evaluation processes. We've made some improvements, but it needs to be routine, ongoing, and it needs to come from this council. So that's standard 4A1. Standard 4A3. In our self-evaluation, we said we partially meet this standard, and we had some action plans, and ACCJC agreed, you don't really meet fully this standard. And some of the action plans had to do with constituencies working together for the good of the institution. That again, it's assessment and continuous improvement. It's putting tools in place for the continuous improvement. It's a lot of repetition. And we need to communicate procedures to participate in the PGC and how it interfaces with the collegial governance system. Standard 4A3. Standard 4A5 also. In our self-evaluation, we said we meet the standard, and in the team report, they said no. And this has to do with the role of leadership, decision-making, doing evaluation, and using the results for improvement. And the recommendation was that we evaluate all components of the structure and processes, communicate the results of the evaluation, employ assessment tools to assess the effectiveness of the PGC. So what the PGC has based on our documentation essentially is we have operational guidelines. We've done an internal survey, an external survey, made a few recommendations, but not followed through on them. And I'm looking to you as this council, leadership of the council, you know, what are the next steps? How do you want to move forward? And I can't emphasize enough how important Standard 4A is. It's leadership and decision-making. And the better, as a council, this leadership body works, it will have amazing trickle effects, I believe, in the institution as a whole. And it's up to all of us to figure out how to make it work better. And we need to act fast too. We can't just wait until 2 months before the team comes and do an assessment and, oh, we've got some good suggestions. We've got to do it right now.
Could you possibly put up the timeline or even the teams from, maybe the timeline? So,
Oh, the general timeline.
yeah,
Okay.
you could do it with a Senate package.
We're at 5 minutes, can we extend for another 5?
Just as this. And then edit something about it, something else.
There we go. Thank you. The timeline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay, so. Okay, all right, so one of the things we were thinking about, or one of the things that I was hoping the teams would take on is that when we form the teams to write the self-evaluation, so Lonnie has been assigned to be the co-chair of the team for 4A.
Thank you.
So kind of hoping that the team that writes Standard 4A might take on actually looking and creating the timeline. So if you go to the 4A action items, yeah, and that's all right.
So here's the teams lists, and again, I'm just doing the plug. There's a lot of empty faculty members, classified staff members, students. There's some names that are filled in, and we thank you for your leadership if your name is here.
But I think if we counted, there's more faculty than admin. I
don't know.
Well, there's,
We'll take the post
We're
minutes
gonna
at the
take,
next meeting.
okay.
well, there need to be.
Yeah, there has to be.
I mean, look at it. There's,
They're
No, there's
faculty.
more admin down at the bottom, Steve. See, we have to have the one admin at top, but then we step them down there with some
We
additions.
intentionally, in fact, we
No.
intentionally had them more faculty in the makeup of the teams.
All right,
Anyhow,
you guys, I was trying to make a lighthearted joke.
all right, there's Lonnie.
Thank you, Lonnie. Lonnie, you are the chair up here. What I was hoping, so then go to the action items deficiencies for Standard 4A. So what I was hoping is that the teams for 4A and for 4B and for all of the different standards would actually go through these things that we said we were going to do in our own self-evaluation and what ACCJC said we needed to do, and create the action items and make them happen. And so aside from like writing the report, to actually go through and look at this, and it would probably be good to have a team from PGC and the other constituent groups that are all involved in 4A be on this team and actually sit and talk about what needs to happen and make it happen, and then when they write the self-evaluation, they know it by heart, they're just writing what they did. I'm hoping that all of the teams will do that. So, I suppose I just signed up.
Well, and one of the things that we can talk about as well is, if you like, what we can do is we can give this some thought. And since we have 3 meetings in March, you know, when we meet again on the 19th, we bring our ideas. So you have some time to think about what some of those options may be. And then on the 19th, we decide how we move forward on that. And so so it gives us a little bit of time. I can certainly add it as an item on the agenda to discuss and to come up with some sort of agreement of how we want to move forward. Yes, Teresa.
So, right now, what you're just showing us is that the ask is that a team be formed. Is that what the ask is? You kind of, showed where the work has to be done, or I don't know if you even finished your presentation.
Yes,
around
it
that.
was just to share with
just
you
those-
what the outstanding, or what the action items are that the college self-identified, as well as what the accreditation visited team noted that needed to occur by the time they're here, and this group needs to come up with how they're going to address it. And there is the role, as Lillian mentioned, of standard 4A work group, which writes the report to meet the accreditation standards. And I think it's great that Lonnie's on the PGC as well, and that's what I was hearing Lillian suggest, is that there be some leadership from the team, but that also members of this council be on that team to help direct the work. That's what I was,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, and we need to think about that and who that would be and so forth. So I think that it's not just about filling in those blanks either. It's also about the process of how that's gonna work.
Yeah, whatever this group decides, there needs to be buy-in from the group that, yeah, this is how we think we can make ourselves better. It's a self-improvement process. I don't want Lonnie going out on her own saying, well, the team needs to do this and this and this and this, and it will all be good. There needs to be input and buy-in, because the council itself is the one who's living the leadership role and needs to be self-assessing.
So we're at 10 minutes, extend another 5?
Yes, please.
Yes, Karen.
So I've been asking for this discussion to be on the agenda for this meeting since I first saw the visiting team report. There are, I believe, 3 things that they said we need to do. I would think that rather than put it off and think about it some more, I would like for there to be on the agenda, since obviously it's not gonna happen today, on the agenda for the next meeting, those 3 items, each one is an agenda item, with a proposal coming really from you, President Paris, about how we're gonna tackle it. And if you send the proposal out in advance, then people will come with something to go with. Now, I'm very happy that one of the things on the agenda today is this like flow chart thing, and that helps address the accreditation issues, and we have a draft in advance, we get to work on it together. But if we just say, well, let's everybody think about it, and then next time we'll figure out what we're gonna do, it's just gonna keep going into the future. But one of the things we could revisit right away, is we got the results of the assessment of a survey about what people thought about, the PGC, like from a year ago, and I don't think we've taken any action really in response to that. That's just one of the things that could go on the agenda. One of the things that we're concerned about is not having sufficient student, and this goes back a long way, efficient student presence here. I see 2 students here today. When I went and looked at the appointment list, I saw 4 student appointees, but no alternates apparently appointed. So please contact whoever it is that needs to work on that and ask them to please appoint alternates and let the alternates know who they come. So I think there are a lot of things that can start being acted on before there's more discussion. And as the person who sets the agenda and runs the meeting, I really would like for you to help get those things a little firmer going rather than just putting it forward for discussion.
Thank you, Karen. Is everybody good with adding it to the 19th and Mike coming up with recommendations? Yes?
Yes.
Karen, okay.
I can't quite do thumbs up until I check my calendar, because there is an upcoming day that,
I'm gonna continue on
That
with
was fine.
Teresa until you find your date release.
yeah, it's
Okay?
okay, I have thumbs up.
Okay.
I have a couple
Yes,
comments.
Teresa.
One thing is that I do agree with Karen in that this is it. I mean, we are the PGC. This is where everyone is in one room and one place at the same time. So I think it does make sense to have more than 5 minutes per meeting to discuss these things together. It just makes sense to me to, instead of having to make some other time elsewhere. So I agree with whatever can be done to add this on as a you know, a permanent agenda item for longer than 5 minutes. That's just my 2 cents on that. The other thing is the student involvement. This is something that I've suggested in other meetings as well, and I'm sure maybe others have had the idea, but I know that students are students first, so it's hard, you know, getting involved in different forms of committee work or in government can be challenging. So whatever can be done in terms of the creation of perhaps one unit of independent study or something along the lines of course credit for students who are participating in government, on committees. I think that they give up a lot of their time, and I think that it's time that they're actually learning all kinds of things. So I think that it's possible to have that kind of incentive created through curriculum committee somehow, so that students are, you know, are spending time on these committees and in government, and that they also get some kind of course credit. I think that might help to address the gaps in student participation.
Thank you, Teresa. James, do you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, whatever is brought forward by your office, I would just be an advocate of keeping it simple. I mean, we could do evaluations, we talked about doing surveys and sending them out to 30 million people, but that's not really what's necessary. I mean, it's just to have a process and a structure with consistent evaluation. So to the degree that whatever recommendation you come up with, I would just say, let's do something that's sustainable, that we can get behind and write up, but not overburden ourselves with.
Thank you, James. Lillian, did you have on the date?
I'm fine, it's all good, I just
Francis.
noticed.
One of the things I wonder, in the past, and I'm not sure if this is still going on, students used to get paid for participation in committees. And if that's still so, and there's a problem with the flow of money, I think we need to look at that. And I know that the executive council that the students, Associated Student Governments has, maybe if you guys could come back with some kind of suggestions at the next meeting about how we can help students increase student participation, because I know that's your charge, right? That executive council. I mean, because there's people not here, and I know the students really fought hard to have, in fact, it was the students who invented the idea of the alternate members, so that there was always constituent members here. And so the faculty and I think the staff jumped right in, and we have our alternate members, and we get in touch if we can't make it to a meeting. But the students who actually brought that to the Participatory Governance Council now are languishing. And so if there's something we can do to help, if you could tell us next time, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Francine. We're over 2 minutes on the 5 minutes. Do we want to extend?
Yes.
Yes? How many more minutes? 2 more minutes.
5
Got it.
minutes.
5.
Um,
Yes?
So, what you said, Francine, I completely agree with you, because before in the past it used to be this way, but since like 3 years ago, since the interim chancellors, it stopped.
The
So
payment.
yeah, it was a compensation each time students go to a meeting.
And
There is, and usually the chancellor mentioned that he will be doing that again, like compensating students that are sitting in committees or sitting in hiring committees, or but I would like to give that to Vincentos. Vincentos, he has some information about that.
I just would say that I think you have to look at some of the students that get service scholarships are paid to attend certain meetings, but what I hear a lot from students, and I've talked with Bushra about this, and it's going to open up a can of worms, is that all of these meetings are always here, so we put an undue effort on some of our students to constantly travel to Ocean, and I know it's a much larger conversation, but I think the location of a meeting definitely affects getting a broad student perspective that isn't centered at Ocean, and I just want to put that out there as well.
follow with recompensating students because, you know, you find students paying from their own pockets to come to meeting, and I don't find it right, you know. They are having hardship, so I think it's a great idea to encourage students to be more present and to meeting.
Thank you.
Omar, is it possible on the team that's supposed to write for,
Yes?
you know, for example, I mean, you know, this was an idea I was gonna mention at the last administrator's meeting, that maybe we assign folks who are specifically focused on, you know, standards and making sure they're met, and not just writing about it, but actually making sure it's actually happening.
That sounds great to me, but you gotta
That's
get
kind
the
of
members on the teams, which everybody's working on.
Was there any other?
I mean, it does in this particular case, which is a
Right.
governance issue.
We're at 5 minutes again.
5 more minutes.
5 more
please.
minutes.
5 more minutes, everybody's okay with 5 more minutes, okay?
Getting back a bit to student participation, which is one of my favorite subjects, I can say that in the past, the previous version of the system, I was the chair of the communications committee for years, and our students always attended, fully participated. Now, we provided lunch for them in addition to they were paid, and then they went off and reported to the Associated Student Councils about what we were doing in communications. So I do think that's really, I want to emphasize that that's important. Even if they're coming from other campuses, this pays for their travel, which isn't cheap. The other thing we could explore, and I'm not sure quite how we could do it with the technology we have, but we could be using 3C Confer or something like that, so that people could be attending from other campuses. The 3C Confer is free to us. We would just have to explore how we could apply it to attending a meeting, and then we could have the meetings here, but people could go to a room on campus for a PGC, and someone would be there to assist with 3C Confer, so they could talk to us, they could type in on the side their comments and stuff. It could be kind of an interesting option using technology to help with this.
Very good. Any other comments? Karen?
I don't know if we could extend 5 more minutes to ask about, we're talking now about the 2016 report and standards, but of course, coming up sooner than that is the response to the injunction and the list of things. There were quite a few things that I think have to do with standard 4A. I have some knowledge of what happened in 2013. I think other people did, and people are asking me, you know, so what's going to happen? I don't know what the framework is for how we help provide that. I know that this is going to be an open response. It's not going to be like the appeal was, where it just hangs behind closed doors. So can we ask you about that?
I'm looking at that, Steve, because we haven't received the letter back from the commission instructing us how to respond, or
Right,
what format that should be in, or any of that information.
Right,
yet.
that's the point, is that last week we communicated to the commission that we wanted to participate in this what the commission is calling the injunction process. And so now the commission has 40 days to provide us with a report describing exactly what the issues are that are open to us and that we are to respond to. And then we will have 80 days from when we receive that report to submit our responses. So I think it certainly would be useful for those people who, the fact is that I expect that the report is going to say you need to place yourself in June 2013 and think about what you would have said in June 2013. You can't talk about the way things are now. So it's going to be an unusual undertaking in that respect. But so people who do have knowledge and information about conditions in 2013, it would be useful for them to at least start thinking about what those conditions were, and what information that was not provided in the team report that led to the 2013 action might be included. I mean, generally we try to be very inclusive in those team reports and provide all the evidence that we had. But if there was evidence in 2013, in the spring of 2013, when we provided that show cause report, that didn't make it into the report, that's what we would be looking to add. So if people have a way of cataloging that and organizing it now, that would be useful, but we will have 80 days to produce that document, and that at that time we'll also have much more specificity as to what the commission is looking for from us.
So we're at about 5 minutes again. Do we want to extend for another
We need to
another
extend.
5
We need to
minutes?
extend.
This is
This is
super-
our top
Okay,
priority.
another 5 minutes? I don't know which one had their hand
She
up.
can go first.
Well, okay, so what people are saying to me is, yes, we will have 80 days, most of which will be during the summer when people are less available and less around. Even though they haven't told us, especially those of us who, some of us, you know, I have a real good guess of what they're going to say. And if you would like to set up a meeting that would include me, and would include some other people having to do with some of the standards, I think we could get started on it so that we can expand the amount of time we have, right? If we're gonna wait till, then we only have 80 days. But we could get a lot of stuff in place first.
Okay, we can do that.
That's a good idea.
Lily?
So, one of the things the Senate did as far as guessing what those things are, it's the 10 deficiencies that were additionally identified without being given notice of, and you can compare the reports, we know which the 10 are, but also we don't have 80 days. In collegial consultation, the chancellor said he's aiming for turning it in before their June meeting, because he wants a decision to come out, he wants them to be able to not have to have a special meeting.
Why?
And so, I'm just putting out there
Well,
that
well,
the
the-
80 days
Just
is
a
not
messenger,
something to.
Well,
No, I'm sorry.
the court's ruling said the commission shall promptly convene and hold a meeting. So,
And
so,
I'll-
so if it doesn't coincide with the June meeting, it's my opinion the commission will be required to call a special meeting.
And all I'm doing is reporting out that
Yeah.
as the Senate representative in collegial consultation, that is not the timeline that was presented to us to aim for. That it was a much shorter timeline, and therefore it makes Karen's suggestion much more important to follow through on, if that's the case. And it is, and we were asked to make sure that on our agendas in May, we would have a review of this so that it could go to ACCJC in June. And so, just making sure that we're all operating off of the same information. I have it on the Senate agenda for very, very soon.
80 days from now would put us past,
If we're
Oh.
not counting 80 days, that,
yeah, okay,
So up to 80 days,
Yeah.
just let people,
right,
we're not being long.
okay.
Any other comments?
I'm sure that's what we have.
Yeah, I thought we did something. I thought I did that.
I think we did too, but it's not here. Don't have high level of English language, it will be great for, to communicate to our students that are having challenges with the language.
I would love to have some students come to our accreditation committee so that we can come up with some good ideas together. Or offline or just with you. Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Okay.
Go hard, thank you very much. Okay. Next we move to public comment. Yes, Lily?
So, mostly I wanted to say that I would appreciate very much, perhaps, maybe at the next meeting, some clarification on getting things on the agenda, on the form. There used to be a parking lot, and I've submitted some things to be on the agenda, and I don't see them in a parking lot.
What,
And,
like what?
Like the institution set standards. I
It's
have
already there. It's in the parking lot.
But I don't, okay, so maybe,
Wait, there's
maybe
one
just
down there.
have.
Yeah.
You mean on here?
So I'm missing it. That's okay. Is it, and then the other thing I had put in was a resolution passed by the academic senate on the names, the district name, that we wanted to make sure that a no vote was recorded. So I was trying to bring things from the academic senate here. somehow I didn't quite
What
succeed.
was that last one?
The naming policy?
Yeah,
Naming?
The naming
It's possible
policy,
Using the name,
yes.
the naming.
The naming
naming
That was
policy.
supposed to be in the parking lot?
no.
It's already passed, but I think she wants to have it
No, it
officially
didn't,
recorded.
it didn't pass. What do you see in the parking lot?
Well, it's not.
It's not there.
Okay,
This body and the
So-
somewhere.
so I was gonna recommend that perhaps we go over again the process, because somehow I wasn't succeeding in pushing, so right, I come from the executive council and we have things that should be brought forth to PGC. So there's some things that I've been trying to bring forth, and then I don't see where they go.
Okay, Grace, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lillian. Other than being neighbors
No,
on the second floor, you can always email me, and every single time, just like what you suggested before, that I have to send out the notice of agenda at least 1 week or 72 hours, I do that too. So if you guys have anything, if you've seen something that it's missing there, it's either you can email it to me directly, or you can just knock, hey Grace,
no, but
So
for people who are not 20 feet from your door, it would be, I would
it's
actually
also
really-
good to email. So I'm just waiting for the email. There's also a form there.
If there's some items that you feel that have been an oversight, just email those to me, and we'll start there. So like the naming one and the other ones, if there's some that
So,
should be on there,
okay.
you can email them to me and we can research them.
So, this is not a complaint, this was just a suggestion, because I wasn't succeeding. And so, it's possible that others might not know exactly how this is supposed to work its way through. And it was just a suggestion that at another meeting, that we actually go through the process again of how we do this.
So everybody,
Yes,
well, why don't we agendize it for a future meeting?
that was
and
my
then we'll-
recommendation, was just that we
It shows
agendize
that we
it.
are working on it.
It wasn't a complaint.
So there's a click to view the queue. It should go,
So I just didn't get this.
and then you will actually see there if there's anything that it's missing.
Oh, there it is.
So for example,
Okay.
and then if it's not in the parking lot, you can always say, Grace, look at the queue. You've missed it, so can you include it in the parking? And then, this is, and I'm glad that you're using the form, so it's there, make sure that it's always public and it's there.
So we see it it's in the queue.
Yes.
But I think the question, so getting from the queue to the agenda, is that the issue?
So actually it was both. One was, I was looking and I honestly wasn't finding the queue. And that was
Yeah.
just, thank you,
Yeah.
finding out where that was. But then if you look, then I have an item from January 21st. And on the district facilities committee, which at this point is moot, but was a recommendation that had come from the Academic Senate Executive Council that was an institutional issue that would I think then come here if that was something from the Executive Council. So, but it's good that it's in the queue, although the committee is formed.
Well, but let me explain that one.
Okay.
That one was actually on the last PGC meeting we had.
Oh,
And the reason we did not go to the district facilities committee is because we went so long in the meeting that everybody decided everything after new business, we were gonna, I'm just saying, for
No,
that
right.
particular one, I just wanna be
Yeah.
clear that
And
we decided as a group not to do that.
And I want to put out there again, this was not a complaint, this
Right.
was just, I'm willing to play the fool to learn how to figure this out, right? How to,
We're at 5 minutes, do you wanna extend another 5?
I have
So do we wanna extend another 5, yes?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
My public comment is a follow-up on my note on page of last meeting. I now have a handout that I've shared with the committee here. And it is basically an opportunity to join Lillian and myself and others in being a part of the complaint restraint team at City College. This does not mean that you don't observe problems, but when you do observe them, you provide a solution when you observe them. And instead of whining, like, oh, the traffic is so terrible and I hate driving, how about the traffic was terrible and I feel lucky to have a car to drive? I mean, it's a stupid example, but you get the idea. So I invite everyone to join this movement at City College and to invite your friends.
I read it online.
And you can see it on the Academic Senate homepage. Up there in the corner where I keep all my nasty spreadsheets, there's the complaint restraint challenge. And I gotta go hard.
I pledge not to complain for the next 30 days.
We're just gonna start with 30 days. But I think you understand.
Anything else, Frank?
That's it.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Okay, very good, thank you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move into new business. And we're going to get into our informational items. We have policy and procedure flow chart. Steve Brookman, Jim, who's going to...
Jim will take.
This will be very good. You have 15 minutes.
Flow chart. The flow chart that I have.
Yeah, it's on. It's on.
It's on?
Yeah.
Okay. We have this flow chart is on the positive side of complaining. Instead of saying things aren't working always so well, we are attempting to start to work on trying to make things better. This flow chart is a first step. You notice the word draft is large. That means this is, as they say in the accreditation rubric, this is a continuous improvement project. It isn't expected to actually ever finish. And there's a lot more to this than what's up here on the chart. For example, last meeting, William brought up the thing, well, what are we supposed to do with the Basic Skills Committee report? This can go off in all kinds of different directions. How to put things on the agenda, what happens if they don't get on the agenda, all kinds of side issues. So don't think this is intended to be complete at this point, but it's a start. The main idea with this is, generally speaking, things are generally taking too long, and it's not just about this committee. The process takes too long at every single step of the way, right from the top right to the bottom. We did agree quite a while ago, actually, in October I think it was, to an administrative procedure that no step of the process would take more than 45 days. And generally speaking, they're all taking longer than that. So, I shouldn't say generally, half the time, more than half the time, they're taking more than 45 days per step. So I shouldn't say generally, that's the wrong word. But so as a result, out of some 60 policies and procedures that have been written and done in started in about a year and a half, only about 10 are completed. And obviously at that rate, we will have a hard time doing the whole book. So the idea is we got to figure out a way to do it better, more efficiently, more effectively. And one of the ideas is that things need to move along. And the other one is we have to have a very specific idea on how they're supposed to move along. You know, who's supposed to deal with what. And that chart where they're broken out in terms of groups and who looks at them, the idea there was if we could just decide who's supposed to handle what, at least in terms of looking at it in some detail, before it comes to this council for review, that makes it a lot simpler and quicker also. So that's part of it. The comment about back and forth, that's probably not stated very well, but the idea is that things just get passed from group to group, and never actually end up going down the chart, we're not gonna get our job done. It doesn't mean that things can never go back and forth, but we have to have a way of limiting that kind of activity. The one jurisdiction, one constituency jurisdiction is just kind of another way of saying the same thing. If things just get passed around from group to group, it will never actually move forward. So that's the gist of it. And this is an idea where we have an issue, we should try to focus on how to get it better. The issue that I've raised is timeliness, and the idea is more focused on a specific way of doing things. And as far as I'm concerned with this, if we can just have a conversation about it, this is not like a district formal administrative procedure. This is just a process for us, and I thought after I wrote this, maybe I should have called it process flow chart. It's just a process. How are we going to do our business? And so it's very flexible, and anybody's ideas can work. It's not something I would hope that we spend a lot of time talking about in meetings, because that gets in the way of actually getting our work done. But we should try to do it, and we should actually use this as part of our response to the Accreditation Commission. We had these issues, and we had these discussions, and we've made our process better. That's what they want, and I think this could be part of that. So that's basically it in terms of what I had to say in terms of presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any questions from the council for Jim? Karen?
These are actually suggestions rather than questions.
Very good, thank you.
I am concerned about the things, for instance, saying only one constituency jurisdiction. I know you say it's an informal chart, but sometimes then people will then point to this and say, well, that's why we're not going to, have it go to more than one constituency. There are, of course, many issues where under Title V, we are required to get input from several constituencies, for instance, both students and academic senate. So I can't think right now of what a better wording for that is, but I think we do need a better wording for that.
Okay, I agree. I found out that the wording on this isn't very good, and I will try to work on trying to. My point is, we shouldn't endlessly pass it back and forth between groups and never go anywhere. That was what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it very well.
Okay, so I think the way to make it so that we don't pass things back and forth is to help clarify how something gets finished at each step, so that a group understands that it's finished, right? They have a timely way to get it finished. The reason I think things get passed back and forth is because a lack of what I'm looking for, a lack of people just say, oh, well, it's a draft, it's not really done yet, I don't really have to finish it now. There's not enough understanding of what finishing a document and passing it on means, is what I think. If we work on that will fix the timeliness, rather than saying you mustn't take so much time without helping people understand how they can do it faster.
Okay, I got your message.
Okay.
I'll try to write something up that responds to that specifically.
And my other suggestion is that the top of where things are coming from, I think there needs to be a fanfare of it can come from more than one place. As Lillian was just talking about things that can come off of the, suggest this for the PGC agenda. And in terms of getting good compliance with ACCJC standards, there's a specific standard in ACCJC saying that institutional leaders create and encourage innovation. They support administrators, faculty, staff, and students, no matter what their official titles, in taking initiative for improving practices, and that then those go through a process. So
thank you. That's a good idea.
In there, so that's clear. Things can come from lots of places besides.
Just a comment about that. When I first arrived here and started working on this project, I generally got a response that this isn't my job, so that's why what hadn't been happening. And I've been trying to encourage that it is somebody's job, but that doesn't mean everybody can't participate. It's somebody's responsibility to make sure something happens. That's what the administrator's responsibility is, but it is everybody's job to try to participate. I'm trying to distinguish between a responsibility and an all-hands working party thing. but everybody should participate, yes.
And I have one third suggestion at this point, and that is, I would suggest using a different box shape for things that are actual bodies where I can look at it and say, oh, I know who the academic senate is, and things which maybe are not. So for instance, I don't know, is the administrative development and review, is that the name of a committee?
No,
Or is that a
it's,
group?
no, it's not. So you want to distinguish, you want something that distinguishes between officially constituted groups
Yes.
and just individual activities.
Yes, or a description of the kinds of people that it could refer to.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, and kind of like, who is this? That kind of.
Yes, so if
yeah.
I'm looking at it, I'm trying to figure out where it's going to go next, I know, I have a better sense of what this box means. Is this a named group, or is this any one of a number of things?
Thank you, Karen. Lonnie, you have anything?
There was another chart, I'm looking for it right now on our institutional planning page, but we had talked about a chart where it had the academic senate and it had a loop of things going through, and we had made an arrow from the academic senate to the board of trustees. I'm not finding, if I spend more time, Grace, can I find it like this for me?
I know what chart you're referring to. It's actually it's an administrative procedure for institutional planning.
It's the administrative procedure for institutional planning.
Yes, it's in the administrative procedure for institutional planning. I believe Pam Mary actually was the one who did the chart, if I remember right.
Yes.
Did anybody have Francine, did you have any? Lillian, did you have any additional?
No, I think we're just kind of looking for the.
Okay. You're looking for the chart, Francine, yes.
I mean, one of the things I just wanted to point out is all constituencies review during the 45-day period. Now, if that is PGC, and we are saying the PGC meets during the academic year, or during at least class session, but if all constituencies are expected to review in 45 days, then you are basically eliminating faculty and student input into this conversation during the session. And so I just want to point that out, because we're not here, we don't continue and students aren't here.
Yeah, sometimes oversimplification is a problem. That particular sentence that you just stated is actually in the official administrative procedure. This process only counts for basically one process in the session. I did put it on here, but it's in the official administrative
I think it
procedure.
might be helpful to say that, because everywhere you go, that's the thing that someone will jump down and
The 45-day counter is only for one process of that session.
Very good. Any other comments from the council? Any comments from the public? Yes, someone.
So I was just wondering, where it says student council, I think it would be very helpful if it said associated students executive council, because when policy comes through, it needs to really go through the executive council. And if it goes through just a student council, I don't believe it, it doesn't meet the threshold of being vetted by students.
I understand. We do have a problem when sizing of print and sizing of boxes, getting all the fit on a page. I know that's not a terribly articulate excuse, but that's the reason why a lot of that's abbreviated.
EX or something.
Pardon me?
X.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I'll heavy-duty acronym. That's the answer to the issue.
Lonnie?
Yeah, just to clarify, the administrative development and review box refers to the action of developing the policies and the procedures, correct?
Writing the first draft, if you want to say it a different way, that's what that is. Which right now, of course, I'm mostly doing, but I actually am intending to work myself out of a job and have the administration take this task over. I'm an unusual consultant. I don't like to extend my contracts.
Thank you, Jim. Any other? Yes, Lillian.
Well, so can I ask kind of the background to that question?
Like, sure wasn't clear.
What is, okay.
And to me, it reads as an action as opposed to naming a group to do something. It's not terribly,
Maybe it would help just add a line, one ST as in first draft. And then it makes it clear.
that's what's happening.
Right.
Or putting them in different design boxes, the way Karen was talking about, you can also indicate which is provides a group. Yes, Lynn? Yes.
I want to actually refer to this other chart. It would be great to be able to put it up there and just see how the chart could be more cyclical. It comes, Pam Mary made it. If it could be the base to put more of this stuff in.
That's a good chart.
We've seen this chart.
No, I'm aware of the chart that you're talking about. The issue with that is this isn't truly a cyclical, there is an expected product at the end. And it's true, you're supposed to review your policies eventually, but there's no expectation that it be done annually. This, at best, it's done once every 5 years, and that's probably pushing it. I don't think very many institutions do it that quickly. So that's not really cyclical, but in terms of I think what you were trying to say is some of the structure of it, I don't have any issue with. But the cyclical part I would fuss about, because this is not something you just endlessly do on. You do it every year. No, you don't do this stuff every year.
Okay. Any other comment? Jim, thank you very much. Steve, did you have any additional comments on that one, or?
No.
Okay, very good. Clara is not here, so I'm going to move on to the Santos, Student Code of Conduct and Student Discipline Process. In Santos, 10 minutes.
So I'm going to talk and pass out. Oh, sure. So, thank you. So, so this isn't even a first reading, it's more of a pre-reading and a discussion that I really wanted to have with PGC. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Just making sure this mic is working because I didn't get any response at all.
Good afternoon, Dean Santos.
Thank you very much. So, I'm bringing these potential board policies forward, but some background is, I revised with Associated Students the Student Code of Conduct last fall. I took it to Associated Students Executive Council 3 times, the Classified Senate, the Academic Senate, and PGC 3 times. But what I didn't do was the last step by codifying it into board policy. So our good friend and consultant here reminded me that I wasn't completely done, which is actually pretty good because it's given me a time in my role and job to see what we may want to change or add. But for the most part, there's nothing here that's changed from when I went to all of the constituent groups a year and a half ago. I'm bringing this forward as my introduction and opportunity to discuss something that I believe is very important, and that is our enforcement of the Student Code of Conduct. Anytime something happens or an incident happens for the standards of student conduct in a classroom, instructors, department chairs, academic deans are very fast to call me. However, when incidents happen outside of the classroom, we're sort of up in the air. So I'm bringing this to PGC because I firmly believe that we need to be consistent in our implementation of the standards of Code of Conduct. And I'm specifically talking about examples when it comes to demonstrations, press conferences, meetings. If students came into this meeting and disrupted the meeting, I would want to use the process that students have passed in Classified Senate, Academic Senate, and PGC to enforce the standards of Code of Conduct. And we haven't done that in practice as a district. So I'm less concerned with what's in here right now because Associated Students are not done reviewing it, and really more wanting to open the discussion on we need to start enforcing the Code of Conduct. And I'd love to hear from PGC on where y'all are and where you stand.
Thank you, Dean Santos. Francine?
I enforce it all throughout our department.
Great.
And it's actually, comes up more often when classes are not in session.
Okay.
You know, we have the campus radio station.
Right.
And we have a lot of people that are going to the entertainment industry that are interested characters. And we have it posted everywhere, which I think is extremely, we have the old one, we don't have the new one.
Okay.
But the posters designed maybe by Merge Studio and put everywhere, extremely important, because a lot of students don't know the rules. You know, I've had to this semester, just this week, take a student over to the poster and say, see, number one is when that the faculty member tells you that you can't come in the room right now, you have to listen. They're setting up the room for a class, you can't come in right this minute, you're just right in the door, you have to wait. That kind of stuff is really important, and in fact, more important than during lunch, because it leads to more disruption in class if in the hallways and open labs we have anarchy, or whatever they call it.
Thank you, Francine.
And again, I think it gets to, as you say, in the class, I don't think we have issues when we're in classrooms or sessions where they're particularly ongoing. Where we have the question arises again is maybe we need a policy or some kind of process to know whose responsibility is it lies to make that. Because again, when we have an issue with a student in the class, I know Samuel speaks to, okay, you have to fill out some documentation, it's your role to get that to me. In these open meetings such as board meetings, press conferences and so forth, there's no one individual in charge of that. And we often see the conduct, but I think all of us are kind of saying, okay, maybe you do it, I do it, and we just kind of sit back and I'm sorry we're gonna have to join that complaint list. We kind of complain, nobody's sending this forward. Well, I think that we want to look at, you know, who do we want to look at, saying, okay, if you're there at this process, or you hear about it, we should be bringing that information forward so that action possibly can be taken.
Samuel, did you want to respond to that? Any comment or suggestion?
Not quite yet.
Okay, very good, Francine.
There's also the issue of First Amendment rights in a board meeting. That's a very different issue to me when it's these public events. People in this country have First Amendment rights.
Yes, but they're
and I
not
think we
absolute.
have to be careful.
They're not
They're
absolute.
not absolute, but I think we have to be a little careful not to go down a path that I would regard as completely un-American. So it's a balance. I don't have an answer, but I am concerned that the flavor of some of the things at times I've seen at board meetings, like if the public is disrupting the board meeting, that is not a good thing. But the board then can opt under, I think, the Brown Act to move the meeting because it's been disrupted. I think we have to be careful about this, but have a balance. First Amendment is a sacred thing in this country, and constantly, as the country moves toward the right, there's this temptation to reduce its impact.
Lillian and Karen, I saw you.
Karen was first.
Karen.
It's so, sort of following on from what Francine said, looking under the section B, good cause, following conduct shall constitute good cause for discipline. And the first one, it says disruptive behavior, willful noncompliance, and so forth. And I think one of the things that underlines this, or underlies it, is in a classroom, disruptive means making it so that the class cannot proceed, and the class is on, physics or German or whatever. In a political meeting, right, where the goal is about the communication around political issues, it's a little less clear whether somebody's protest is disruptive or communicating. And there isn't enough given here with the word disruptive that everyone is going to agree on what is disruptive and what is actual expression.
I agree, but we're not even looking at it. And I'm not saying if we bring something to Samuel for action, it may be no action, but we're not even discussing it, whether or not it was improper or not. And we ought to at least be doing that. Was that disruptive? Okay, it wasn't, but it was brought forward.
So I think for some people, there's a concern of, well, who's going to decide whether it was disruptive or
Probably.
I don't have an answer to that.
Well,
Okay, let me get to Lillian. She had her hand up, and then Alan, I'll come back to you. Lillian.
Well, so the first thing that I want to say is I think this is an important conversation for us to have. And, we're here, we're Participatory Governance Council, we have all of the constituent groups up here. This discussion is in part prompted by the press conference and what had happened at the press conference. by my definition, the press conference was disrupted. People were unable to finish speaking. And there was a level of aggression at the press conference that many of my colleagues are quite comfortable with, but we did start discussing this at the executive council meeting yesterday. I shared that I was uncomfortable with it. And we would also, so part of this conversation is that, you know, it's not just students, but faculty as well, that were contributing to the disruption, or the voicing of political opinion, or, right, and perhaps, you know, last year it led to the care committee, but we had some places where we could talk about, you know, what is civil discourse, and perhaps we could, you know, have some time that where we say, okay, we're gonna pull everybody together again and talk about civil discourse again, because, you know, if we're gonna hold students to these standards, do we hold faculty to these standards as well? And how do we come to some kind of agreement where if we're gonna hold faculty to these standards, then, you know, can we talk about how there is a place where those faculty and those students, instead of being locked out of the press conference, which kind of, like, this is not just, you know, administration in holding those press conferences and in doing a lot of the things that administration does and that the board is doing that is being protested, are exercising a level of power that they can do without being rude, right? But that we only get a response from if we are rude. And so we need to talk about that as well, right? That there is a power issue that needs to be spoken to.
We are at 10 minutes, can we extend for another 5?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Karen was bound.
You know, I think we are talking about the press conference in particular, but generally about political speech, and the question really comes here is disruption in a public setting, you know, the clarification between classroom, library, or press conference. You know, who makes a call on what is considered disruptive? I mean, certainly there was disruption at that press conference. Was it political speech? One can argue one way or the other. But at what point then, you know, what if it was just a member of the public? You know, it is a press conference, so a public member comes in. Is it then, what kind of discipline happens then when it's just a public member versus a student or a faculty member or an administrator? And so it's interesting that this was brought up now. I don't know if this has been in the works for a while, or
What's been in the works?
It's been in the works for a while.
It's been in the works for a while.
Oh, yeah, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's been in the works for a while. Yeah, I'm sorry, there was, I'm gonna come back to you, Francine. Chief, did you have anything?
No.
Okay, James.
I was just going to say that, you know, over the last couple of years, we've had any number of incidents that have been disruptive. Now, we can talk about the most recent one, we can talk about one in Chinatown a couple of years ago. We've had a number of them. It would be nice to have at least the standard for us to say, okay, we need to at least review. I mean, nobody's saying from what I'm getting is like, well, this is exactly what's going to happen in this situation. But to have a standard where we can have a conversation about, is this appropriate? I think it's reasonable.
Hold on. Okay. Teresa?
I saw a video of the press conference, and what I thought about was the role of public safety. And I was thinking about your staff, Chief, and I was thinking about the position that they're put in when there's all this fear about police brutality and lawsuits, and I mean, you know, these are like real issues, these are real topics, and I just thought, you know, how if I'm working in that Department of Public Safety and I'm there and my purpose to be there is to ensure that the public is safe, and then the press conference happens in this way, and I think Lillian's word of aggression is just hit the nail on the head, because it was, I think, there was a level of communication and speech that was really, I mean, for some people could have been super intimidated. I mean, it just was inappropriate. So I think that we have to, in the discussion, include and not forget the role of public safety, and that they're a part of the community, that they're not just, you know, police and trying to, you know, get at the students, but that they are a part of our community, and that they are an integral part of our community. They need to be a part of this conversation, and I would hate to see that they are not able to do their jobs for fear of, you know, being assumed as disrespectful.
Okay, you had your hand up for some time, so,
Oh.
no, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
So Lillian's comments about the responsibility of faculty and students, I think, are very important. For me, someone who that spends a lot of time working with student leaders and student advocates on campus, one of the roles that I think I play a lot of the time is to help them make their points and communicate their passion, but in a way that is constructive and doesn't endanger them or anyone else, or put officers in strange positions, all these kinds of things. And I like to think that mostly I've been fairly successful in that work. It's a process of how do you work with students. I have seen, and I'm thinking in particular of the events in front of Conlon Hall. I can't remember exactly the date, but I'm sure Chief, you probably I know that. I have seen times where I am pretty confident that I would say faculty acted irresponsibly in advising students to do things that I don't think they themselves would have done, and put those faculty or those students in situations that were really dangerous and bad. And in that sense, so there's another level of faculty responsibility and staff responsibility, I think, in terms of advising and working with students to help them make their points in ways that are constructive and not dangerous. I just want to add that. I think it's really, really important.
Thank you very much. Jim.
I just wanted to comment on something that was said. The determination of disruption is made by the senior person in the situation. And in that particular, I will talk about the press conference since it's fresh. The actual determination was made by the state chancellor to allow the people in the first place. He asked that they come in. And then, in my mind, if he felt it was out of control and disruptive and all of that, he should have said something, but he didn't. And my point is that's how it's supposed to work. And I mean, the way it's supposed to work is the senior official is supposed to ask for the behavior to stop or to change. And if he does so and the people continue with the behavior and not respond to his directive, then the police are supposed to be asked to step in. That's the way it's supposed to work, and that's the way it's written in the procedure. But obviously that didn't happen in this situation because the state chancellor chose not to do that. It was a choice.
Someone? No, okay. We've gone over 2 minutes. So do we want another 5 minutes? Okay, very good. Steve?
Yeah, Jim's point was I think valid in terms of how things might work on the scene in the moment. But I think the purpose of this document is more for the events that come after after the action has occurred and allegations of misconduct are presented up through this process to Samuel and others. And so that I think that's really what the focus is on. And so then we come to the question, well, what is disruptive? And everybody has their own definition of what is disruptive. The press conference is like choosing the easiest case. Everybody obviously believed that was disruptive, and there was no question. It's much harder to deal with the less simple cases. And that decision will be made at some level of the administrative ladder. That's how things work at organizations. Some administrator is going to make a decision as to whether there was a disruption and whether that disruption merits some sort of consequence for misconduct. What you can do is to provide some parameters for that decision in terms of what is disruptive and what is not. And obviously, there will be differences in what's disruptive. What's disruptive on a normal, Wednesday at 1 o'clock when people want to walk through the campus and someone's accosting them or shouting at them. That's one circumstance. A classroom's another. A demonstration is another. So each of those will be considered in their own setting. I don't know that all of that can be really addressed in this policy. There's going to be discretion allowed for whoever's making the decision, and then generally there's an appeal process, so someone else can look at it, and that's how these things work. But somebody has to be in the position of deciding what's disruptive, and we have to accept that we're not all going to agree with what that is. We're not going to be able to get a document that we can all say, yes, I agree that this conduct is disruptive. We're rarely going to get to the situation we had at the press conference that was so obviously disruptive, and we will have disagreements, but we need to have a process that's fair and that allows voices to be heard.
Thank you, Steve. Lynn? I'm just going to piggyback off of what Steve said. It's going to be determined on a case-by-case basis, and in the case of the classroom, it's going to be the instructor that's going to decide if a student is being disruptive and keeping the instructor from teaching the other folks in the class. It could be anything from the students shouting, or they have their darling pet rat, or whatever it may have you. Whether it be what disruptive means, and I think why we choose a broad term like that is it can mean many things, and it's going to determine on it's going to be based on the circumstances, and most likely the instructor or whoever's in charge in the situation is going to have to make that determination.
Thank you, Lonnie. Okay. Francis.
And one of the things that I would like to just observe as a possibility, I can think of I wasn't at the press conference, but like Teresa, I did watch the video, and it made me uncomfortable to watch what occurred. I felt very uncomfortable. But I also felt even more uncomfortable with initially finding out it was all over Twitter, it was all over Facebook, that people were locked out of the press conference. I believe that stirred the pot. It doesn't excuse the actions during the press conference at all. But and the same thing happened, interestingly, on March 13th, that when the students had been accustomed to their annual, we're going to go in and the chancellor's going to buy us pizza and we're going to have a slumber party and talk. Instead, they were locked out of the building. Again, there was a reaction. So I think that we need to be mindful of the biggest picture. And again, this does not excuse the actions that made me feel uncomfortable, but I think we learned in the 60s that when you come back with a big bang, you're going to get a big bang in reaction, and I think we need to discuss how we can calm the bangs down, and whoever is in power, whoever is the senior person, is the person who has the most privilege in the situation, and hopefully can act wisely to calm things down before they ever stir up. And again, I felt very uncomfortable with the video of the press conference. I want to emphasize that. But I felt just as uncomfortable learning that people were locked out.
Okay, we're at our time. Do we want another 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes, Samuel, and then Lillian.
Sure, I just want to say a few quick things. The first is that students all have a right to due process. So just because someone is accused of something doesn't mean that they're automatically going down this disciplinary process. So when it comes to the question on who decides what's disruptive, well, it doesn't just mean they get punished for it. So I just want to point that out, that there is a process for students. The second piece is, I'm bringing it to you all because it's going to be a cultural shift, right? I've taken this through all the constituent groups over a year and a half ago, and I'm going to start enforcing what the students have approved, what faculty and staff have approved, what PGC has approved, and I'm going to notify students now that
we're starting now. So I'm not just going to arbitrarily start tomorrow. I'm going to send out a mass email. I'm going to pull the students in and I'm going to warn them if they're involved in this type of behavior. So what that will require is at least some patience with me and understanding how to support our students and also to keep this dialogue going. The third piece is last spring the Chancellor pulled together a task force on civil discourse, and there are a few folks that are missing and not on leave, so we're bringing that back. So it's a separate conversation but definitely related. So I just wanted to point that out that task force will be coming together, and I think that will help us clarify how we have some of these discussions. And then the last and final thing that I would say is I'm a reasonable person, so I hope that if you all want to talk more about this one-on-one, I'm happy to have a conversation, and I think this is something that's really good, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm good. You're good? Chief?
I almost forgot what I was going to say. But again, I would like to at least see a process. At the end of the day, I think we're fine with the outcome being, okay, there was no violation. But again, currently right now, there is not a process to get the question asked, was this poor behavior in any sense of the matter. And so that's what we're looking for, is that there be some process that will bring this forward, and folks have to provide evidence and due process from that standpoint. And we're very well aware of free speech and all those things. But right now, and I think if there was some evidence that there will be a process, then maybe we wouldn't have some of these issues as well.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else from the?
Well, he had his hand up as well, but then what he said, then I just had a question.
Okay, so James, and then I'm going to go back to Fred, because you've had your hand up for some time. Okay.
And I was just kind of echoing what Samuel and the Chief and to some degree William, but I think we need to have some standards that we can point to and consistently. This is what the expectation is, and if it's not, then we have a process to go through. I agree with you on some of your other issues, but I don't think that that's what we're talking about. I think we're talking about having a process for the students, and it can roll over perhaps to us at some point.
Thank you, James. I'm going to go back to Fred.
Just kind of a follow-up on Francine, what she said, because I remember Dr. Hayakawa over at San Francisco State, and we're in the business of education, all of us, administrators, everybody, and we need to have a process. There needs to be a standard set. The other side is I think there's a lot of feeling of disenfranchisement amongst the students, and they get hostile, and we've got to, all of us, up our game a little bit to communicate better what's going on and promote and teach that level of discourse, so our students, as they go forward, they're prepared to deal with the world in meeting standards and having good, healthy discourse, and not to resort to hostility in these demonstrations like the press conference, because that was disturbing.
Okay, we are 20 seconds away. Do we want to extend time again?
I want to ask if...
How much time do we want to extend?
Oh, I thought you said we had 20 seconds.
Okay, 20 seconds, go for it.
Go. We got, okay, 19, 18.
I thought you might.
Was it your understanding at the press conference that if Bryce Harris had expressed some level of concern, that would have signaled that this was out of hand? And was that also his expectation as far as you knew?
We had not had that conversation.
I think I'm extending 10 seconds. I don't usually say, but I think I'm going to say. It's not just about the press conference. It seems there has just been a lot more lately, a little bit more aggression. Regardless, this is just a Virginia opinion, regardless if Bryce said something or not, what the students did was wrong. I mean, I think we can just all agree that the behavior was just not behavior of the student that should follow a code.
Get on the students only though.
Well, okay, let me back up. Of individuals, okay, that we have a standard to follow, all of us. So, I mean, regardless of that, I still do believe that some individuals, and it's not just the press conference, there's been other situations where people deface buildings and things like that, and so, anyway, that was just and I went over my 10 seconds. Do we need more time?
Yes.
Now, y'all can't, we gotta get through this agenda, so y'all can't leave, we gotta get through this, okay, we wanna spend for 5 more minutes?
Take whatever Karen wants next, after we're done talking, whatever she wants.
Okay, are we extending for 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Michael, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to say these policies are similar to the policies in every college and university in the United States, first of all. So they're not any different than any other college and university. The other side I want to talk about, when you talk about the press conference, the students were given a command to let the speakers finish speaking. Once that was said by faculty or staff, we should have went directly into this process. So just so you know, there wasn't a command. It didn't have to come from the chancellor. It came from faculty, it came from staff, or it came from administrators. That was an official stating that that they should be, that the press conference should continue and go on, and we should have moved. I just want to share with you, we should have moved directly into this process. Okay?
But the
Thank you,
students
Michael.
did.
I'm sorry, Karen, you had something? You don't have anything to say? Okay, Alan, and then back to Lillian, do you have something to say? I'm sorry,
Yes.
and Boucher, so we'll start Alan.
Well, I mean, Tim's not here to speak for himself. I mean, he did speak up and fortunately, abated any escalation beyond where it was going. And he stepped in because he did see someone grab a microphone and start to turn around, and it looked like it was going to escalate in a bigger way. And we certainly don't want to go to darker spaces on our campus, and so I thank him for doing that. And while I do think that students have a right, and everybody has a right to voice their opposition to what was going on in the press conference, I do also agree it got out of hand, and it would be good to have a policy in place. I'm not arguing against that at all. I guess we just have to be cautious about what our tolerance for opposition language is.
Okay, who else needed to speak? Bushra, did you?
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, I agree that it has to be a policy where there is, a way where students, when you can come and, interfere when there is anything dangerous or aggressive or really disruptive. But we have also to be careful about disruptive, because sometimes students are coming from certain way of life where they are having hardship, they feel not understood, they feel frustrated. So also we need to have also something set where we can deal with those students and help them be better in communication, in dealing with the frustration, anger. So I think also we should look at that.
Thank you, Bushra. I'm going to take one last comment. I'm going to take Lillian's.
I'm fine.
Do you
I
have a
hope
comment?
that we do that civil discourse.
Yes.
That's what I want, yeah.
So we do not have a quorum at this point, right?
6, 8,
Okay.
9. There's 9. 2, 4, 6, 9.
Okay. So, okay, so.
You can still. You need 9. So.
10, these. We need 10.
We have 10.
A quorum is required to take action.
Yeah.
If several of the next items are not action items.
2, 6.
But I don't.
You count.
No, you count.
You count.
Yes. Stand up and be.
You don't need to vote though, I think. Just for form, no, just kidding. You can bring a tie.
Okay, so we're okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't wanna cheat anyone out if they had an additional comment, on the student discipline, blah, blah, blah. Any other comments? Okay. Samo, thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna move to our policies and procedures, and,
My turn?
start with Steve Bruckman, and Steve, we'll start with BP 1.19, conflict of interest, second reading, 5 minutes, please.
The conflict of interest policy was presented previously as policy and administrative procedure. At the last meeting, Karen made a suggestion that the procedures didn't give any direction to people as to what they sort of should and should not do if there was a conflict of interest. Like don't act in violation of a conflict of interest. And I thought a language to that effect has been added, but I don't see it there. So I don't know if I neglected to put it in place, or if the draft got misplaced, or what happened. So I ask that we do this back next time.
Steve?
Yes.
Is that both BP 1.19 and 18?
Yes.
Okay, so we're bringing back 1.19, BP and AP 1.19. Okay, so then we're gonna get into BP 2.17, smoking, second reading. 5 minutes.
I need to explain this. We already adopted the administrative procedure, but we neglected to adopt the policy that goes with it. So this is just filling in a blank hole. That's all it is.
I make a motion that we approve this as a second reading for BP 2.17.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, it passes, thank you. All right, I'm gonna keep moving along. Okay, so we are at library services, BP 6.24, Lillian and Steve, who's,
You want to take the lead here,
I-
Lillian?
You can, I can see fine.
Well,
This has to be the executive council or the academic senate, and so.
Well, I don't have the background, so if you would like to say a few words about it.
and then there's, APs.
Okay, so, and I'll do that in Karen. This policy and administrative procedure basically follows that chart that Jim Hurwitz put up, that we all decided we were, wanting some improvements on, but it worked really well this time, right? Just to
A little
say.
bit slow, so I wouldn't say really well, but acceptable.
Better than most.
Better than most. That's a good way of saying it. Better than most.
Yeah, we're gonna put you on the state challenge list when you want to be
He told me that he was not a candidate for that.
I have a really hard time with that particular. But I always suggest an improvement. I never just complain.
So here's what happened. This observation. Do you want to talk already?
Well,
before
I
say
do actually.
Go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead.
Because here's the thing, you're going to say how it went through the process really well, and then I'm going to have to say, yes, and I'm really sorry, but we don't have a librarian on the Academic Senate Executive Council at the moment, and I did not do my part of getting, I saw the notice of it, and I showed it to librarians. There was a question about the wording, and I didn't get that back in a timely fashion, so if it's, too bad, this is the wording, that's fine. But let me just, may I say what the wording issue is?
Yes.
So it says that the college shall develop and maintain library collections, materials, and services. The way in which it puts collections first, at this point, books are not the most important part of what librarians do. because so much is online material, and information competency is really the core of what librarians do. And so we're not entirely happy with that exact wording, and we'd like to possibly change the wording a little bit.
We bring it back to second reading with a slight change?
Yes. So it I should have taken that to the academic senate and had that put in at the academic senate. That's my fault. Jim?
Great, and we can amend it right here, not a problem.
Does it need to now go back to the executive council to say, that we prefer these other words, or participatory governance? Do I get to, and Francine, parents, get to make, and Alan, a decision that that's such a minor change that it doesn't need to go back to the academic senate executive council for a change like that?
I'd like to respond to that particular issue, because it does come up a lot. I would give a bifurcated answer, which is if it was a significant change in the content, I think it probably should go back for reconsultation. But if it was a minor one, and I'm interpreting what you said as a minor one, I don't think it should go back. That's the way I would answer the question.
Faculty representatives? All right.
Steve, did you have any words?
No, that's fine.
So do we make a motion?
So it's a first reading.
It's a first reading.
No motion.
Yeah, the first reading is supposed to be informal, I thought, anyway.
Yeah. So,
No motion.
But somebody has to be written down somewhere.
I had the change written down, but when I read it, it's like, it doesn't, there's a grammatical problem.
but
Can you just send it to
For the second reading.
Can you send it over before?
Yes, that's what I'll do, is I'll
Let's do
get it
that.
to you first.
So would it come back as a second reading or a second first reading?
That's the first reading.
well, in my view, when there's a minor change that does not get into the substance, we don't need to go back to another first reading.
Everybody okay with it, bringing it back as a second reading?
Yes.
Since it's so minor? Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, and you'll send it over to
I will
Steve?
definitely do that.
Perfect, okay.
Thank you.
So that was,
And were there any comments on the AP? Because that was in the policy.
I do have a comment on the AP. The language in the AP, actually the librarians aren't that happy with that either. But here's the story on the language there. The language there about the library's mission, this is basically quoted out of the technology plan, the college technology plan, which is at this very moment under revision. So the new version of the technology plan has a ways to go before it's finished. But when it is finished, it will probably have some changes to the language there.
We'll bring it back.
So then, so you're not gonna hold up the AP for the technology plan to be finished, or the AP would be revised at that point? How does again, the
I believe
procedural issue?
if an AP is ready to go, even if there's some change down the road, we should go and get the policy done and
because it
get
might
it
affect
posted.
other ones too, so we can just bring those back.
Okay, so then that's my understanding on that one. So we won't try to make any changes to the language at this point. When the library technology, the technology plan gets changed, then that will
Right.
cascade down. Okay.
So everybody's good then with the AP 6.24 for now? All right, very good. My goodness, we are at the end of the So, just before we adjourn, real quick, remember that our next meeting, we're also gonna do the training, right? That's
Yeah,
scheduled
and
for next
I
meeting.
was gonna bring that up, because the next meeting, it sounded like we had I can't remember exactly what was discussed earlier, but it sounded like there was significant amount of discussion.
There is actually, because we also will probably bring back the diversity committee, we have the accreditation one, which I'm sure we'll have some discussion on that, so.
Yeah,
It's still
so-
good to have it on there, I just wanna make sure everybody's,
It just might be too much to jam into the meeting.
yes, Karen?
I recommend having training on the agenda and doing it first, because good training will help us make better, more efficient use of our time in the meetings. Once we're trained, we will be able to get through more stuff quicker than we are now.
So everybody's still good moving forward with the training on the 19th?
Plus, there will be acting opportunities for everybody else.
Whoa. Should we dress up?
Very good, well, thank you so much, have a nice evening, have a safe one, we'll see you in 2 weeks.